like to start this up and just thank everybody for coming, and hopefully we have a few more people show up. It's just everybody get together and, you know, go over whatever all the committees and stuff are doing and who's here and stuff. So I'll start out by introducing myself. I'm Louis White. I'm on the select board.
Yep. Counterclockwise?
Yep.
Okay. Eric Lineback, Energy Committee.
Calvin Farwell, also Energy Committee.
Stan Howe, Smoky, also Energy Committee.
Joe Little, Planning Commission.
We seem to all be sitting together by boards. I'm Sam Farwell on the Planning Commission.
Alan McBain, Development Review Board.
Joshua Pacheco, Development Review Board.
Sue Kern, Taft Library Board.
Jeannie Bristol, Library Board.
Alex Wilson, Energy Committee.
Judy Fink, Conservation Commission.
Jean Newell, Lister.
Darrell Newell, Rescue Inc. representative.
John Anderson, Conservation Commission.
Cindy Jerome, Town Moderator and Social Services Advisory Committee.
Terry Chapman, Select Board and Cemetery Committee.
Maria Glenback, Select Board and Planning Commission. Lynn Levine, Conservation Commission.
Geraldine Wilson, Select Board.
Zeke McGann, Select Board.
Ed Antes, Conservation Commission and Prospect Hill Trustee.
Mary Ellen Copeland, Conservation Commission.
And I'll just say that all the Select Board members are also members of the Prospect Hill Board.
Right.
What committee would like to start, and let us know what you guys are up to? And anybody? Energy Committee's sitting right next to me, so.
Sure, okay. So as you all are probably aware, one of our big projects right now is the heat pump for the town office. That came up at town meeting, obviously, because we needed to make sure there was funding for that, and that was voted on for $10,000, which was based on, we had gotten 3 bids, and that was sort of the middle range one, but for various reasons we had figured that was the best deal. And this came up at the town meeting as to whether that would make financial sense, and that's one thing we're crunching on now, and Stan might want to touch on that or not, but one of our challenges has been to try to figure out exactly how much electricity is being used for heating right now. In the winter, of course, there's the wood stove that does the bulk of the work, and then there's baseboard heating, which is very inefficient, and those units are quite old, that fill in when needed. Those, of course, are not on a separate meter, and so what we're trying to do is figure out now how to estimate what amount of electricity is being used for heating. So in our last monthly meeting a couple weeks ago, we talked about various ways to do that, and Stan has started, volunteered to start actually putting a spreadsheet together for that using the methodology we came up with. We got a couple ways to sort of triangulate at it. Of course, the baseboard heating is not used in the summer, but then you've got the air conditioning units being used. So one thing we're going to try to do is estimate all of the other things that are using electricity, lights, computers, etc., and try to figure out what that is, and then subtract that out of the total energy usage, as well as then trying to figure out what the air conditioners are using in the summer, because, you know, so they're in the summer and the baseboard's in the winter. Anyway, it's a pretty tough nut to crack, and it's going to be an estimate, and we're going to obviously do a range, and you know, based on a, you know, conservative and aggressive assumptions. But our general feeling is that it's going to be worth doing. And we were just chatting a minute ago here about, because this was probably 5-6 months ago that we got these bids, and already prices have come down significantly. So obviously we'll go back to the, I guess, the 3 that gave us bids, but at least the one that we sort of have chosen, and see what, you know, what the pricing might be now. But I'm assuming it'll probably be a little lower, and we're guessing that, you know, the ROI on that's probably going to be on the low end. This is very rough right now, maybe 5 years to upwards of 10 years. But we'll see once the numbers are crunched. So that's one of our big ones right now. We also are looking at the possibility of getting grant money from the state for installing electric vehicle charging stations, possibly at the Park and Ride here at the bridge. We've also met recently, and I'll get to this in a minute, with Kian Boers, who represents the owner group who bought Maple Valley, because we've been in contact with him for quite a while, but we finally were able to get him to come to one of our meetings a couple months ago, and we talked about possibly, getting the meters put over there. So there's basically 2 grants right now that we're aware of that we could go for. One is called the EVSE, Electric Vehicle Supply Equipment Grant, and then there's another one that's a Municipal Park and Ride grant. Those can work together. The town would have to put in a certain amount towards the EVSE project, but then that Municipal Park and Ride could basically cover that piece of it. So we could hopefully do it at no cost to the town, but it's to be determined, obviously, whether these are pay per charge stations or whether the town would actually supply the electricity. So all that's to be determined. They're doing these in phases. The deadline for phase 2 passed, back in end of April, I think. They didn't have the application for it ready until about a month before it was due. And once we got a look at it, it was pretty ridiculously extensive. And we were pretty sure that folks that didn't get the grant in phase 1, who basically had their application all together and just needed to polish it off for phase 2, we just didn't want to try to rush through it. We wanted to get a good head start. But unfortunately, Calvin has sort of been the one on top of this. The phase 3 grant is only going to be for what's called a level 3 charger. And we had pretty much determined that level 2 was what we wanted, would make the most sense for Park and Ride. So I won't get into the nitty gritty of that now. So anyway, we're not sure how that's going to pan out, but we're hoping if we don't get them at the Park and Ride, at least we'll have some at Maple Valley. And then, so Maple Valley, real quick, again, we've been in touch with Kian, and as you all know, I think their plans have not changed much since he met with the select board. Going to do a distillery and brewery. The one piece of news to me was that the plan now sounds like down where the old parking lot was between Route 30 and the river is going to be a wine, so they're doing wine as well, and they're going to grow some grapes for sort of display purposes, but they're going to be purchasing their grapes from elsewhere and making wine, and they're going to have a tasting area down there. So that if that's news to folks, that's something to think about, because that's activity happening right down by the river, and obviously will impact the neighbors that are right there. But so the distillery, they're going to grow some various crops, wheat and rye and whatnot, that go into this distilling process, but again, more just for show. I'm trying to arrange now a meetup with Kian at Maple Valley to give us a little walk around and talk again. We've been talking about ways they can obviously make the operation as energy efficient as possible. We've talked about wood boilers for process heat. Wastewater is another big concern. They're working on that. And the time frame now, I think, is pretty much what it was when you last met with him. Probably next early mid-spring would be the earliest. They would like to try to get the thing up and running, but it may not be for another year after that. So it's up in the air. But we're hopefully going to continue to be closely in touch with him and make that operation as efficient as possible. One thing I wanted to mention is Button Up Day. We were part of that last year. One thing we had been talking about was the Button Up Day event typically happens in the fall, and we want to do something earlier so that once people get assessments done and have recommendations as to things they can do to button up, they actually have some time to do that before the winter. So we're going to work on some, perhaps an event, but at least getting information out, getting the word out earlier this year. And then, I don't know if Stan, you might want to talk about Portfolio Manager, but there's a neat tool that the federal government has put together to help towns and facilities assess their energy use and be able to benchmark that against other similar operations and buildings around the country and regionally, et cetera. So if you want to say,
and we've started just with the town office building because it's easy to see if this tool will be useful to us. Got the information entered in there. And it also shows you how you match up with everybody else. That's kind of a unique building because like half of it isn't used. So as soon as you enter unoccupied in the upper floor, it kicks you right out of any kind of rating. But it's still useful to be able to go look at all your energy use in that building in one spot. Something we're exploring.
Those are the highlights, and we would love to get any suggestions for ways we could help any of you with what you're working on or project ideas for us as well.
So one question that comes up for me, Eric, is what's in our town plan for energy? And there were certain benchmarks and certain goals that we had set. So I don't know if that's, kind of on your radar.
That's a good point. We should go back and,
Yeah.
because we were quite involved in
Yeah.
writing the energy part of that, a year and a half ago now. And, of course, the state has these big goals as well,
Right.
which are,
I was on the energy committee for a while, and one of the biggest challenges with that was figuring out what the baseline is. So how do you figure out, how much you have saved or, what distance you've come if you don't have a baseline. So I know that's what
We have a baseline of the municipal buildings.
Yeah,
Which is
right.
really all we can hope to get accurate numbers for.
Right.
We tried a survey and that didn't go over so well. People aren't willing to share their information, so.
Right.
And if you try to go to, oil dealers in the area and find out what's delivered to Dummerston, it's pretty difficult
Right.
with multiple zip codes and all of this, so.
I just like to make sure that our town plan doesn't have us, create expectations that we can't meet. So we should change the town plan if it's something that's not achievable.
right. And I'm glad you brought that up. We will revisit the town plan with that in mind. It's a good point.
Anybody else from the Energy Committee have anything to add to that, or? He pretty much,
Eric mentioned ROI, that's return on investment, so economics term.
Planning Commission, you wanna?
Sure, I can address that. So the Planning Commission has two goals. One is to oversee and update the town plan, and the other is to do bylaws and amend the bylaws as we see fit, or as everybody else sees fit. And so we get this information from either the town plan we did a year or two ago, so that's all done now for, is it 8 years, I think? 10 years, we don't know. Anyway, we'll get it done again in 10 years. But you'll have to update it though, again.
Isn't it 5 years?
It has to be updated every 8
changed.
years.
It's 8 years, I think, yeah. I think it's
But-
8 years.
It's always better to be updating it more frequently.
So we haven't started, again, updating it, but we'll probably start at the end of this year and chip away at it, because it takes a long time to sort of review it all. And it relates to stuff that you said about the energy section in it, is really the town plan is always changing. And that's why, you'd think it would be static, but it isn't. So we're always looking at it and finding out areas that need to be changed. Those baselines change. It's just the way it is. You have to start somewhere. So the other thing is working on the regulations, the bylaws. And this year we're working on a few different things right now. We have a laundry list of stuff that we chip away at our meetings. We're currently looking at the signage and trying to make these, a lot of this is just we're not creating new stuff, we're trying to make it clearer. So it's really hard when somebody comes into town and they're gonna start a business, they need to put a sign up, and things aren't as clear as maybe as they could be. So we are trying to work on that. So signage is one we're working on right now. We are looking at screening for solar panels, which we probably have no legal right to consider, but we're going to do that anyway, and we're going to probably come up with some regulations about these things. We're talking about it in any case. It's not something that I can answer questions about that. We have on our list that we've already started was extraction
Earth and mineral extraction, updating that definition.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's about, I think, all we've got at the moment.
Well, there's always home business.
Oh, home business, the other one, I'm sorry. So the home business one, which really needs to be better defined. It's very complicated if you're in the zoning department. So Roger's been great about feeding us information, telling us things that are not in compliance with the state of Vermont. And so we do have to, that's the other reason we update any of the regulations, because we don't comply. So I always say it's a really exciting committee to be on. So anybody wants to join us. You want to add anything?
Well, you've recruited, we now have a full slate, I think, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Joe as chair has filled the vacant seats, which is great.
Energy committee still has room.
Energy does,
We
okay.
got vacant seats.
I maybe built it up bigger than,
But one of the zoning amendments that the select board just adopted with, we sent them a laundry list, but one of the most significant is the variable lot size amendment, which allows property owners in districts that have large minimum lot size. Say there are 3 districts with 5 or more acre minimum. And that's a change from 10 years ago when all of our properties along all of our roads were in rural residential, which was a 2 acre minimum. So everyone pretty much figured I can subdivide out 2 acres. That's changed since our 2010 town plan update and our 2014 bylaw update, which brought conservation zone and a rural district, which it was a new district that had a 5 acre minimum, and the conservation zone, both of which came down and crossed roads. So property owners that used to have land in rural residential didn't, and we wanted to keep the flexibility to be able to carve out a small house lot, even if you have a large amount of land that's in conservation or rural district. And so this allows for that by using a kind of a formula, which if you want me to get into the technical about it, you can ask me later. But I'm very pleased that went through. I think that's going to be, I think that ever since we updated the town plan and people saw their property zoning change, it was just a matter of time before that issue would come up where somebody would want to be able to carve out a house lot and find that they couldn't. And so I think that's something where we actually made a difference for the good.
It is flexibility.
Yeah.
So.
And Geraldine's point I wanted to follow up on. I think Geraldine's remembering a goal that we set. I was on the energy committee with her at the time, and it says Dummerston will reduce total per capita non-renewable energy consumption by 40% by 2030 from a 2010 baseline, which is a great thing to strive for. But the energy chapter, I think, is a great candidate for something that we could work on before waiting for this 8-year requirement for a town plan update, because there have been some laws passed by the state legislature about energy planning and things that you can have in your town plan regarding wind and solar, ridge lines, that we could incorporate into our town plan now. So I think that would be a good chapter to start sooner than later.
Okay. DRD, you wanna?
Sure. So I guess our role is a little different from a lot of you in that we don't really create anything. We're charged with ruling on all the things you create and seeing how an application fits within them. So it's a bit of a challenge at times, but basically all of our work is generated by the zoning administrator. For each district, there's a list of conditional uses for that district, and those are things that he cannot approve. And so the application then comes before the development review board to see if it fits in with the criteria of the town plan and the zoning bylaw. Lately, we had a great deal of short-term rentals, all the Airbnbs in town, and Roger did a really great job at seeking all those out and contacting the people and getting them to come in for permits. And as a result, I think the Planning Commission came up with a new section on short-term rental. Before that, it was an unspecified use, and we just really didn't have any decent criteria. Basically, we were left with parking. Okay, if you've got enough spots for what you're trying to do, it's approved, kind of thing. So that was very helpful to get that in. And again, to reiterate what you said about home business, that's a very hard thing. We have a lot of service industries in Dummerston where people work from their home, but they have all their equipment at their home, but they work elsewhere, and that doesn't really fit in with the definition of a home business. So, hopefully they'll define that. I suppose they could come to us as an unspecified use, but it's much better and much easier for us if it's clearly defined and laid out. So we kind of try and give the Planning Commission and Roger feedback about that so that the Planning Commission can develop some more detailed criteria. Other than that, I think our bylaws is pretty strong in most areas, and usually we have a pretty clear-cut choice to make based on, we really don't have any opinion that we bring to the table. Our job is to take the application, compare it to the bylaw, and say it either meets it or it doesn't. So there's not a whole lot of wiggle room for, making way for one person and not another. It's really pretty straightforward, so that's a good thing. Josh Pacheco is our newest member. We actually have a full board now with 5 full-time members, voting members, and 2 alternates. So we're back up to full strength, which is great. But if anybody is interested, let the select board know so that you can be on the short list when we need another person. Yeah.
We used to have a requirement actually in the bylaws for a planning commission member to be on the DRB, and we had to write that out in the bylaws because we couldn't get anyone who was willing to do that double time. But we do need that communication, and the zoning administrator is really doing a great job of that, of letting us know what's happening, what kind of decisions they're seeing coming through. That whole Airbnb thing was facilitated by Roger, and so, and actually we had kind of an all boards meeting about that, but that where we decided who needed to do what to fix this problem. But that communication is essential. I think home business, I think there's a real need for an improvement in the regulations as they're written on home business right now, and some businesses may be suffering. Some may be trying to just fly under the radar because they don't want to know what they can't. That what they're doing they probably aren't allowed to do.
Yeah.
They'd rather just
go ahead and do it. Yeah, and I think right now it's a home business gets brought before our board if someone complains, and I don't think that's right. I mean, if you're going to have a bylaw about home business, then it should be across the board, and you shouldn't, as long as no one says anything, it's okay. And I don't think that's really right. But so that's what we're working on, and Roger's doing a lot of work reviewing current permits and finding out who has them and who doesn't. So he's doing a really good job. He's probably grateful he doesn't live in Dummerston.
But I don't think we want to be shutting down people's home businesses as a rule. So and I can see that the way that there's not a lot in our bylaw, but I think there was a recent example where there wasn't any way that the DRB could grant the permit. But I think we need to write in more flexibility and allow people to be able to do a variety of things. As long as it's not wrecking the neighbors well, or that kind of adverse impact.
And if we do a good job on our end, then it's easier for you guys.
It makes sense.
And that's what the message we always get back is,
Yeah.
you know, it seemed like a good project or whatever it was, but it didn't fit.
Yeah.
And that sort of says to us, we need to rewrite the bylaw.
Who in the town weighs in on Act 250 projects? I know the planning commission does. Does the DRB also weigh in on Act 250?
The zoning administrator basically gives an applicant information right at the time of the application about the state requirements, and there's a pamphlet that the state puts out and, you know, says, call the permit specialist in Springfield and find out if there's any further requirements. And we try and stay away from that. I mean, if we know something's definite, we'll mention it in a hearing, but it's not really our purview to say, you know, you need an Act 250 permit.
I know
That's
that,
really-
you know, Maple Valley was brought up, and, you know, what they're waiting on now is their Act 250
Yeah.
permits, which may take a year, may take 2 years. And I just was curious how and where the town weighs in on that.
We haven't seen an application from Maple Valley,
I
so.
mean, yeah, the state should notify the planning commission as well as the select board, but I mean, the planning commission's, by statute, is a party to any hearing that happens. So,
Typically, on our decisions, we just say, you know, the applicant needs to be in compliance with state permitting requirements and state law at all time, and kind of leave it at that, but.
Greg, library, you got?
Library, next, okay. Okay, well, we're representing your public library. Hope you know where we are. We're in one room in this building. And we're a pretty busy place. We do serve the whole community. I hear rumors that some people think that the only library in town is the school library, so I hope that's not any of you in this room, because there is a public library. We just finished up a fundraiser, our spring fundraiser in the spring, in May, so I hope you all get a chance to come in. Check out the book sale and a terrific silent auction and geraniums, because we're responsible for fundraising a fair amount for our budget. And of course, we're coming up on summer reading club time, so if there's any children in the right age group, we have summer reading club. It's through the state, so we get some of the materials from the state theme, which I have to say I don't remember the theme, but we have been, I think we gave something on a town meeting, but we've been doing a survey on hours because we wanted to know. We've heard that some people think that the hours aren't convenient. And so we're looking at possibly adjusting the hours a little to see what's going to work better for the community. We are doing a lot of outreach. We have just finished putting up our 2 little free libraries, which was a project that started when our former chair of our library board, David Patriquin, said that he works with woodworking and makes cabinets and stuff. And so he built 2 little free libraries for us, and the town hall, through the support of our town clerk, we got a little free library on the porch of the town hall, if you haven't seen it. That is all adult books. And our librarian is checking it, and all donated books are used to put books in that collection. And the other one is in the school. It was a tremendous cooperation from the school when we asked them if they would be interested. The principal was very interested, so we now have a little free library with children's books right as you walk in the door, right across from the principal's office. I understand there's a lot of interest by the children going by, so we're very pleased with that. We are pretty busy all year with one project or another. We are working on, of course, trying to improve our small space as much as we can. And so we hope that you'll avail yourself of getting a library card. Check out the public library. We interloan from all over, so you don't have to go to Brattleboro if you don't want to. And we actually get a few people from Brattleboro who come to look for books. And we thank you all for your support.
May I add, we are working on a 5-year plan,
Yes.
and we've reviewed the hours that a lot of people have suggested for the library, but our paid librarian has only got like 12.
Yeah, there's only a limited number of hours.
And the way they would like to have them split up, the poor lady would be here for...
Well, yes, the suggestions went everywhere. It's like, what would you like? Well, it's Monday through Saturday, morning, afternoon, evening, so you have to kind of put together what,
But, you know, we can't have her running the road for a couple of hours every day. She just...
so
Well,
we're
you know.
looking, but we are looking at possibly 3 half-days plus the Saturday, so.
The
What we learned-
volunteers.
What we learned on the planning commission is if you can find the situation that makes everybody equally unhappy, then you've probably got the best
Oh,
solution.
did the right thing. So we'll see, because we probably will see some adjustment by fall to see, because.
If anybody cared to come in and volunteer for a couple of hours,
That's
it'd be
true.
more than
We're
happy.
always looking for volunteers to help out
You
with
know,
things.
I've met what the poor librarian can do. this
Well,
summer.
the librarians are always very ambitious, and for their 12 hours a week, they do a lot of work. And a lot of it is at home, so.
Yes. As well as here.
So as well as,
Additionally,
yeah. So it's just the way it is with small town libraries. Although we work on it being more equitable as much as we can.
Yes.
So.
How about donated books? Are you encourage people to bring books in, or?
When we have a book sale, we
In
do.
the spring.
Otherwise, we don't want large donations all the time. Once in a while, people will bring in, especially new books and something that's a very new title that we don't have. That's nice. We can do that. We've really grown the collection a lot. There's not much room in there for anything, but we've got a lot more new books coming in. And if there's, you know, if you have newer books and you've read them and you want to donate them, we'd probably be very pleased to see them, but not large boxes. We do that once a year, and we just finished it, and it's an enormously labor-intensive event.
We have no place to really store them, so
Yeah.
we prefer people bring them in the week or month before
Yeah.
our library.
That's normally
the
what
book
libraries
sale.
do. Some can run a perpetual library sale because they have a lot of space. Some of them. We don't. We don't. We have a small basement storage space, and that fills up quickly. In the spring, all you have to do is put one notice out there, and everyone wants to, because no one ever wants to throw away a book.
No.
It would be a terrible thing to do, so whatever condition, they're gonna give it to the library. And then we have to weed them out, or we have to be the bad
You have
people
to
to
throw
throw them out.
And you also have a full board now too, correct?
Oh, we do, thank you very much, yes, yes.
All right.
I shouldn't say that because the energy committee's sitting right next to me and I'm gonna probably get hit, but
Well, it took a long time, but we recruited some terrific people, so we have a full board of some energetic people. So we're very, very pleased with that, who are very pro-public library in their community, so watch out, they may be knocking on the door too.
What can you do to help?
Right, exactly, thank you.
who's next?
Do you want to do your own, do you want to do?
Conservation Commission?
Conservation Commission, please, lots of maps.
Yeah.
It's interesting, talking about the town plan, and one of the things it tells the Conservation Commission to do in the town plan is to work on developing a ridgeline overlay. So we began to do that we have actually a new member, David Greenwald, who replaced Bill Schmidt on the Conservation Commission. We also have Betsy Whitaker is leaving the commission, so we're going to be short person. So what happened with this ridgeline overlay is that David Greenwald is a map maker. And so every time we bring up another issue about trying to develop this ridgeline overlay, he goes home and develops a map. And we have been looking at fascinating maps for months, and we still, I don't think, have a very clear idea of what we're going to do with this ridgeline overlay. If anything, it may be that Dummerston is just not suited for a ridgeline overlay.
Can you describe what a ridgeline overlay is?
That's what we're trying to do.
Too. It's an overlay that shows that certain areas of the town that you want to clearly define what happens there because of views and heights and other special features. But one of the problems with it is we don't have much in the way of ridge lines. We're not very high. So we've been trying to figure out what that means, and it's led us onto some very interesting discussions. Judy, you want to tell what each of these maps has?
I don't know whether I can.
Or Ed? Or
So what David Greenwald has done is to project what the views would be from all the paved roads and from Stickney Brook Road. And these are various ways to show that on the map form.
And we don't have that, he did more recent maps that he brought to our last meeting, 2 meetings before that. We don't have those maps, these are earlier maps.
Right.
Yeah. So as Mary Ellen said, every month David works on this more and brings back a different iteration as we come up with different ideas. The views is one thing that is very subjective, but the view only comes from somewhere specific. You can see it from here or you can't see it from here. So one of the ideas was on the well-traveled roadways, what are the kind of iconic views? For example, if you're coming up Route 30, then Black Mountain might be something that you always look at when you drive up the river. So where a lot of towns take on this project is because of concerns about siting windmills. At this time in the state of the technology, nobody's looking to put up a windmill at this elevation. They want to be higher and taller with the windmills. What it'll be like in 10 years or 40 years, we don't know. But that's something that will have to be factored in as this discussion goes on through the Conservation Committee, to the Planning Commission, to the Select Board in the town. The other factor is that is erosion. And some of our high points are more subject to erosion than others. So it's just an example of a few of the factors that we're bringing into the discussion, and we're still probably years from having a recommendation. We're somewhat comforted by the 8 years from now the town plan needs to come up again, because it's a very complex issue, but it brings us into very elaborate conversations about what we personally feel each is important to the town, what people that we know, what is important about the ridge lines and the viewscapes.
The other thing is cell phone towers and certain kinds of development on ridge lines and what difference that would make. And you can go into some other communities and see where there's a lot of development on ridge lines, and we have to decide how we feel about that and what we want to see going into the future. So this whole process with David bringing in all these maps, it's fantastic to have a map maker because he just runs them off on his machine at home and brings them in. So that's helped us a lot, but it's taken us to an interesting place, which is that we all kind of said we don't really know a whole lot about Dummerston, and this study is teaching us a whole lot more about Dummerston. And so we're feeling like we've been doing, as you probably know, a lot of educational programs through the years. And this fall, we want to start having our focus really be on learning with people in the community about Dummerston. So Judy and I particularly have been working on what we should be doing. And in what we have planned right now is that in September, Roger Haydock to speak about the geology of the town for maybe about 45 minutes. Then we'll have geologic and superficial maps like these big ones around on the table, and people can sit around and look at the maps They can draw on them, they can write on them, we can take notes about what they say. So by the time they leave, they have a much better sense of the geology of Dummerston. And then in October, more about what was here. We've had the state archaeologists come several times over the years, and people are really interested in the history, but question that came up to us, how did Dummerston ever come to even be this shape? Why is it this shape? Who lived here? How come the land is the way it is? What is the history since before people were here? What is it now? What changed when settlers came in? And so we're going to have the historic maps. We're looking at the 1856 maps. Have maps around on the table afterwards. So we're hoping to do that in coordination with the Historical Society. We've done, every year we seem to do a program with the Historical Society, and they go really well. And so in November we were going to have David actually do a program on topographic maps to describe what's really going on maps like this, and he'll do a presentation and then have people have maps that they can work on. And in December, we wanted to focus on the wildlife corridors that are identified on these maps, and have Kim Royer from the state come down and really talk to us about why are these corridors important, what indicates that they are corridors, all of that kind of thing. And after each one, we were going to have a follow-up hike the next Saturday so that we could go to some of the places that we talk about. So that's sort of a new direction. We've been doing programs that really brought in a lot of people from around the area. And this year we're going to, not that we keep anybody out, but that we just really want to focus here in town and want people to know about town. And even this spring we've been co-sponsoring a series of walks with Dummerston Cares every Wednesday and every Saturday when it didn't rain. Which so it was probably not the best spring to start that initiative. But, so a lot of them were postponed. So just and any questions about our programming and what we're doing? We figure we're going to do this through the beginning of through the end of the year. In the summer months, we're going to have some programs, a program on monarchs with Kelly Price, the game warden, and Lynn's going to do some stuff on ferns, and working with somebody from the state to do something on poisonous plants. People have asked to have us do something on poisonous plants. So that's what our next 6 months looks like, but we wanted to reassess how that's all going and how we've done it, bringing really the community into education. The other big educational effort that we make have been making is in the schools. And we have, for the past several years, been sponsoring Bonnieville Environmental Education Center to send their educators in to do specialized environmental education in Dummerston. Before that, Dummerston was the only school in the district that did not have that going on. What we need to look at now is how this the new Act 46 stuff is going to affect that. We have done fundraising in the past to make that happen. It's interesting, they did a survey of the kids about the field trips they had during the year, and the kids over top of going to Six Flags were all of these programs where they went out into the woods and did things with the educators. So that's part of our education. We sort of fell into, over the years, we started a number of years ago having an email list to publicize our events, and people signed up for that list. And then Putney would write to me and say, can we put ours in your email? So I'd say, sure, of course. And then the Audubon Society, and then everybody was saying, can we be in your list? And it got pretty overwhelming. So the really good thing that's happened is that the Natural Resources and Conservation Service is taking that over. They've already taken it over, and twice a month, all of the organizations, the woodland owners, everybody is sending their stuff into there. Some of you have probably seen that. So we'll still have our Dummerston thing that we send out, but it's only going to be Dummerston stuff. So we're not tying up ourselves. It wasn't. We also instigated a number of years ago the that every 6 months there would be a meeting of all the conservation commissions and the environmental groups, and those have grown and grown, and we've sort of taken the lead on that over the years, and the Natural Resources and Conservation Service is going to take over that. That's been really important in spawning new conservation commissions. There's new conservation commissions going on in a lot of towns. They're much stronger. Guilford has become really strong. Brattleboro is doing some great stuff now. These were commissions that weren't really moving along before we started having these meetings. Putney's doing great stuff. We just have a new conservation commission in Halifax. They were really resistant over there, and finally they got their conservation commission. So we have a great website that we have had BCTV come in the past and make videos of a lot of our programs, and you can see any of them anytime by going to our website. We're trying to keep on top of the emerald ash borer issue that we're going to be having emerald ash borer here before we want it, of course, and we're trying to keep tabs on what the state is saying for us to do. A couple years ago, Lynn and Betsy Whitaker went around and inventoried all of the ash trees that are in danger of falling, that are along the edges of the roads, so that we have that information so that it's ready at such time as we're told that we should do anything. We're providing stewardship for Prospect, which has included trail marking and maintenance and a trail guide and invasive removal. We work with the Nature Conservancy on Black Mountain. John Bindheimer from the Nature Conservancy has been to Conservation Commission meetings several times, and we check in with him if people go up, and we have a volunteer now who's walking the trails, lets the Nature Conservancy know if there's things that need to be done, or else you've got, John says, look, if you see something that needs to be gotten out of the way, you guys go ahead and do it, that kind of thing. We work with the master gardeners on the rain garden. It's down by the covered bridge. We work with the state on the Dutton Pines to keep, we worked with other people so that Dutton Pines was just going to revert back. The state didn't want it anymore. And we talked with them and they decided they'd work with us. So we have a nice pocket park there. If any of you haven't been there, it's great. Lynn and Cliff cleared a lot of invasives out of there. Cliff did, okay. Yeah, a lot of invasives. There's always people over there. We've had some events over there. Lynn just had an event over there. So there's a lot going on over there. John has been working with the West River Trail Committee. John is also continuing to inventory the flora and sometimes the fauna of Dummerston. And really great thing, John has a blog, and almost daily, if you sign up for his blog, you get an announcement, and there's great pictures of 2 or 3 or whatever John has seen either that day or the last few days. We should probably give credit. John's wife, Noreen, he takes the pictures and stuff, but Noreen sends them out. And they're wonderful. And if you're not on that list, just go to our website and you can click through and get on that list. And every day you just see these amazing things that we have here in Dummerston that if you're not out walking around like John is all the time, you're just not even going to know it's there. And
Even if you are walking around all the time, John is like amazing at finding all these.
He sees stuff that the rest of us don't see for some reason. I don't know what that is. Pardon? Okay. So and I think the neat thing about that too is that over time, as the climate is changing and things are changing in town and we're making decisions, we know what's here. We don't know what was here 50 years ago, but we know what's here now, and in 50 years they can look back and say, we've got this. And there's a record, one is here, there's a record of what you have, there 750 things on that record now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little more than that, maybe, yeah.
And there's a copy.
Just flowering species.
Flowering species. And there's a copy, Betsy Whitaker has been taking care of putting that in.
I think there's a copy at the school.
I think there's a
maybe,
copy at the school
here.
too. Yeah, there's a copy at the school. And John also writes a quarterly column in the Views on our activities. And we have a fundraising campaign going on right now, particularly to raise money for the school program that pays for our videotaping. We're going to not have the expensive emails anymore, but and we've had a really nice response to that, and so we're doing pretty well. So, but we lost Bill Schmidt, who was on the commission, I think, forever. I think it started in 1990. I don't know if he was off for a few years. Lynn's been on forever too. And so we lost Bill, and David Greenwald replaced him, and now we need to replace Betsy Whitaker. I don't know if she's let you know, but she's moving to Brattleboro.
But you do have a full slate still until...
We do right now.
Right, okay, good.
At this moment.
Energy Committee, you see that?
So if there's any questions or ideas, if you have ideas.
Well, as town plan updater, what's obvious to me is the collaboration between the Energy Committee and the Conservation Committee on these ridge lines, because I think it's Act 171 from a couple of legislative sessions ago, is about empowering the towns to put in their town plan areas that are recommended or good for ridgeline development, particularly wind turbines, and areas that aren't. And I think a lot of this was, brought to the legislature's attention by the opposition to the Grafton project. And so, because towns had no say in these developments, it was all handled by the Public Utilities Commission. So now the law says the Public Utilities Commission must give due deference to these types of things in the energy chapter or in the town plan if the energy chapter is written in such a way as to meet the criteria laid out in the statute. So, views, ridgeline development, non-renewable or renewable energy, they're all in this particular project. So, I hope that both of you have good input, and then it's a collaboration.
And when you're talking about the wind development, are you talking commercial scale or just personal wind turbines?
Well, I think like Marion said, right now it's really, it seems to be a non-issue because no one's interested in any kind of wind development on our ridges. They're not high enough. Because
the committee, I think I personally was at the meeting up in Westminster when they were going over that ruling and made some comments. But we had decided, because we were going to get more involved in that, but then realized that Dummerston's really not ever going to attract commercial scale wind, and so it was really sort of a moot issue. Yeah. I mean, maybe that'll change. I don't know with technology. As technology changes. From my perspective as a planner, I wouldn't want to see us,
lock out the possibility down the road for who knows how, wind turbines might change. Maybe just one wind turbine with newer technology might. Right. And we have high voltage power lines going over a ridge up in the northwest corner, and they're not far from a substation. Right. Maybe that's an ideal. Substation over by the gravel pit. Over the river, Newfane, it might be. That was the key. It may be a very environmentally sensitive way to install a few turbines. Right. And in the future. Yeah, the restrictions on sound and whatnot were quite restrictive. But of course that's all going to change as these things get better. And so it could happen, but at least given the current technology, there's very little chance there'd be any kind of commercial development in our town. Right.
Our feeling as well, at least what I argued, was that wind has been so contentious, particularly in wind in Grafton, where they had an ideal site for wind. High plateau, wasn't even a ridge line that was going to cause significant erosion, but a high plateau that could be developed, and 5,000 acres. So there's a half mile from where the turbines would be located and the nearest property owners, and it was still defeated. Yeah. And without a site that's a tenth as good in Dummerston, why you know, raise and stir. Why get everyone upset with their neighbors and fighting about it? You know, we have better things to put our energy towards. So, you know, we opted as an energy committee not to, you know, push for heavy involvement in that Act 171.
Yeah, yeah, well, good point.
Rooftop protection doesn't necessarily just mean wind turbines, it could be
Oh, yeah.
development of
Cell
someone's
cell
like,
towers.
yeah,
Oh,
or a house.
Residential, yeah.
You know, that,
Or a lot of houses.
right, or a lot of development of houses.
It's a great place for a house because the views are great.
Exactly.
Have to have a long driveway.
Any other questions for the Conservation Commission?
Take a look at the maps. These are, you know, these are not like something we need to preserve. So if you see
That's
something
so
you
all of
want
us
to
feel
take
in
it, you
meetings.
can, whatever.
So, listers, do we have a lister here? Oh, we do. Hi.
Yes,
Do you have a full slate of people in your,
Pardon?
do you have all 3 listers now?
We have 3 listers now, marvelous group.
Great. That's what I heard
Excluding
today at the
myself.
office. It is a great group.
They just weren't able to come tonight.
What are their names?
Pardon?
What are their names?
Oh, Michael Silberman and Steve Lindell. Yes, very good group. Well, I think that the biggest thing that we do, of course, is to keep our grand list as accurate as possible. We have 106 parcels that we, every day we're there, we're working on one aspect or another. We work with Roger with the zoning permits to make sure that, you know, everything's intact there. But our biggest thing this is a big surprise is that we will be doing a reappraisal this year. It will be 2 years. It'll be done in 2020. We've hired a firm who we feel is very accurate with what they do. We've had some, you know, classes with this man, and I think his group will do a great job. We have the money in our account, which the state gives us every year, to do this work, so it doesn't have to be okayed by the property owners or the town. And so we're pretty excited about that. This past, was it June 4th, we sent out 136 change of appraisals for the year. That's a lot of work. We also send out new property owners a notice of their appraisal, so that when they get their tax bill in July, they aren't astounded as to, you know, okay, I can't pay these taxes. And they have a chance to grieve at that time. So that helps property owners, and it also helps the listers, it helps the town clerk and town treasurer. I think the people appreciate that.
And you don't mean just sit and cry.
Pardon? They don't-
Grieving is a technical term, right?
No, really, actually, grievance is very congenial. And, you know, if you're nice to them, they'll be nice to you. No, it's.
Change your taxes, but they'll be nice to you.
Pardon?
They'll change your taxes, but they'll be nice to you.
No, we just say, Ellen, that we have nothing to do with the tax rate. We just try to help it be lower as possible, you know, by appraising the property properly. We do have a problem with a lot of people that do live here not filing their homesteads. Right now, we have over 70 people that should have filed, that haven't filed, and of course, they're supposed to file by April 15th, but we get all these downloads from the state every week with 2 or 3 that have, you know, that are late filers, and we end up with quite a few late filers, but we also end up with a lot of people that do not file.
How does that affect your
Pardon?
work? How does that affect your work when someone doesn't file?
When they don't
They're-
file, that what happens is, if you file your homestead
you will be taxed at the residential tax rate. If you don't file, you get taxed at the non-residential rate. And Dummerston is quite unique because we have a lower non-residential rate. So, and it's, you know, it's not an incentive.
exactly.
But the drawback is if people file their homestead and they are allowed to have a rebate, it will go towards their taxes. So, in the long run, it's really, it's the honest thing to do. So, responsible thing to do. This year, we only had 5 people grieve, and they were very, it was very congenial. We explained to them a lot about how we arrive at the number that we've appraised their property at. We try to educate them the way we've been educated to be able to, understand that we didn't pick on them. And lots of our property transfers are people that are putting their property into revocable trusts or into some sort of life estate, so that it is that much easier for them and for their family when anything goes wrong, which I would highly advise people to do. Let's see, what else do I have here? One thing is, one of the reasons why we want to do a reappraisal is because so many of the new property owners will come to us because they did not pay what we have it appraised at. So that brings if we see that there's an issue and we do change it, that makes their taxes lower, but makes yours go up. So we felt, that's really not the right way to go about it. So the reappraisal will really help everybody, I believe. And
When was the last
but a lot of
appraisal
people
done?
coming to grievances now are bringing professional appraisals. They are bringing their lawyers. So that is something that we have to deal with. That is, I don't know what to say about that. They're very congenial, and we do listen to what they have to say, but they also have to listen to what our guidelines are through the state. We have a lot of people on current use. We have 106 of the properties on current use, and that's a weekly process. Once March comes, all the information has to keep coming down to us for us to change. It's a wonderful job. I love it.
What was your question, Eric?
When was the last appraisal process
Pardon?
done? When was the last appraisal done?
2006.
2006. And are you
Yes.
seeing prices go up in general, or values go up in general? Or?
Well, at that time, property was very high.
Yeah.
Now it's not.
So they're going down.
Yes.
Oh, well, that's good.
So, so that will help everybody,
Great.
hopefully. If there's any questions, we're there Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we're always welcome to see you and talk to you about your property. Leave us a message, we'll get back to you. We enjoy seeing the property owners. I guess that's all I've got to say.
Do you notify the people who did not do the homestead?
Pardon?
Do you notify the people to get them to apply for that homestead thing?
What we do, we get a download every week starting in February from the state. And near the end of May, just before we do the abstract grand list, we send a list to the state because they're supposed to get letters off to these people that haven't, to no avail many times. It's the same people all the time. So
As I get older, I'm
that's it.
Rescue Inc., you got something to say?
Well, yeah, lot. We've had
Okay,
a
we'll
very
we'll move
busy,
on now.
we've had a very busy year, as everyone knows. We added 2 more ambulances again this past year. 2 years ago, we built another station in West Townsend. And this Sunday, we are having our annual open house from 11 to 2 in West Townsend. It's free food, come to see the trucks, the equipment, and talk with the people there. We were running a car raffle again as our 3rd year, or, well, actually our 5th year. 3rd year, we're gonna have another Saab. And I have the tickets here, if anybody knows in the past is interested. We raffle off a car every year, and the funds that we raise from that, we have to pay for the car, and we pay for the car, and the money we have left over, we put towards equipment to help keep the costs down. And last year was a substantial increase in calls, for near 1,000 additional. We've traveled up, we had nearly 6,000 calls. We have roughly in the neighborhood of 75 to 80 employees, 24/7, 365 days a week. There's 2 buildings are manned, as everybody knows. And we are running our subscription plan again, and it was mailed out to all the people that have taken it. And if anybody hasn't had it and is interested in it, I have additional forms for them. It's a great thing. It gives you good coverage. It gives you, you get 3 rides for free. And one is a 75-mile one if necessary. And they're all, with the cost of an ambulance, that's a substantial savings. And it includes your whole family or whole household. And
Yeah, I would say, so I've gone to the Rescue Inc. information session for select boards for the last couple of years, and I'm really impressed. And anybody who isn't signed up for the subscription service, I would really encourage you to consider it. It not only helps Rescue Inc., and we're very lucky to have them, but it also is a money saver if you do have to use their services. It makes a big difference in the cost.
so one of our big things is we handle a lot of Medicare and Medicaid patients, and we get a fraction of the cost, or actually billing cost for each time we do that. We don't get only a fraction of our dollar. And so that affects us as well. And when I'm saying us, we are supported somewhat by the town, but our main support is our transfer business. Without our transfer business now, we would not be able to support the people of the valley and the 15 towns that we cover. We have come a long ways in the last 53 years. It's hard to believe, to see what's changed. There's only 2 of us live that were the originals, and I happen to be one of them.
Thank you, Harold.
Quick question, why do you think the number of rides went up so much last year?
Transfer business.
Okay.
There was 8 ambulance services that went out of business in the state of Vermont last year.
Jeez. Wow.
And we did pick up additional, and we've had, right now, Springfield Hospital is in the verge of closing, and they have closed some departments. We have to transfer between Springfield Hospital and Brattleboro, and these hospitals today now, they're not keeping patients, and so they take them in and we have to move them. I mean, they're just, even Brattleboro doesn't. There's numerous transfers, right from Brattleboro to Cheshire, or to Bay State, or to Boston, or to Lebanon, or to Albany. Go, go, go.
Well, thank you very much, Harold, for all you do there, for all the years you've done them. Social services.
Yeah. Social Services Advisory Committee doesn't do nearly as much as a lot of the other committees do. That's for sure. We do most of our work in the fall. The select board charges us each year with gathering information from nonprofit organizations that want town funding and analyze that information and make recommendations. The thing that's on our mind at this time of the year is, should we ask for an opportunity to talk to the select board about the fact that I think it's 3 times, maybe 4, over the last decade, we've had to do a petition and article on the warning to get the funding up a little bit. We did a lot of research several years ago to compare ourselves to other towns and how much other towns give compared to us, and it was really clear that we weren't doing our part. So every time it ends up on the warning, it's approved really dramatically by the townsfolk who want to see it happen. So we're wondering how we could get out of that cycle, and it's, you know, up to the select board to decide what to put in the budget, and then if we want more than that, we need to petition an article. So throw that out there and see if anybody has ideas or wants to get in touch with your thoughts about that. And I have a question for the cemetery committee once you're done.
I guess I'm starting, huh?
Yes.
Well, it's a small group of us. We could use a few more people. Anybody be interested in hanging out in the cemeteries? There's 5 cemeteries in the town. 2 are the only ones that we can sell lots in, and that's the Wilder up on Rice Farm Road and the Taft. And we were graciously giving a lot of donations of land and clearing money, so the Wilder is really looking really nice. The Taft, Shorty Ferret actually got that little bit of land that just got cleared off years ago from CBPS, and we were able to get that done. And our next big project is probably we're gonna have to start plotting for new lots in that section, because there's not many left in I call the newer section. So we do paperwork. We meet with people that have deceased family members that need to be buried, or they want to buy a lot that somebody. So it's Lee Chamberlain helps us out with cutting trees or brush or whatever. So it's a varied committee. You know, it can go from paperwork to dealing with a grieving family, or so it would be nice to have somebody interested in a little bit of the history of the town, because it's really neat going into these cemeteries and seeing where we came from, and you can learn a lot.
Where are you going to?
Yeah. Yeah. So I enjoy it. I think Lewis enjoys it. You know, and Janny Duke's on there. She's the one that does the paperwork with me, and but it's fun. Zeke's had some time as a select board member to get a little bit of idea of what I do when I meet with, the funeral homes and that kind of stuff. So, but really, anybody wants a shout out, to join, and we'd be thrilled. So, then your question?
I've been reading about green burials.
What is that?
You are not embalmed and you're not encased in a concrete container.
There's varying methods of green burial, and it keeps changing. So right now, the town has a rule, I should say, that you need a concrete vault, and then your casket. If you're going to put a casket in, you need a vault.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't deviated off that yet, as of now. I can tell you, being in the cemeteries, I've done this for about 15 years now. When you go into the older sections that The revolts came in the late 60s, early 70s. And when those came in, they jumped at the chance of being able to use these because people, you've got to be careful when you go in the older sections, okay? And so they're, in my personal opinion, I would hate to see somebody 75 years old going to a relative's and falling in and hurting themselves, okay?
Yeah.
And that can happen.
Yeah.
Meeting House in Brattleboro is doing a test section in the back corner for green burials. But they're working on it and...
So you're kind of part of an experiment and
they
if it
are.
doesn't work out, then...
Yeah, so we're letting them experiment because there's different, people have different thoughts on green burials and you can't just make up a rule because with the way these green burials are, no rule will apply. I mean, it might apply to you, but it won't apply to the next person. So right now, if you can get cremated and you can do a full burial.
Do you have small plots for people who are cremated?
No, what we do is we sell one lot and we allow 2 cremations per one lot. Okay, so we take the first half of 5 feet, we allow 1 cremation, and the second lot. We don't have that's something that's the cemetery committee is gonna have to look into when we do Taft. If we wanna do a small area for just cremations. But it still seems like the families want to stay together.
Oh, that's a good point, yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of tough. If you're single, that would be perfect. And then we do not allow a cremation and a full burial in one lot.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there were 5 cemeteries, but then you went on to just talk about 2 of them. What is the relationship of the cemetery committee to those other, what are the other 3?
Well, the town has responsibility for 5 of them. One of them is Dummerston Hill up off of Gun Cemetery Road on top of Sunset Lake.
Right.
And there are a few lots still to be used, but they've been sold, so there's nothing available. So we call it closed cemetery. The second one is the Baptist Church, right here in West Dummerston. It's the same thing. There's a couple lots that are still could be used, but there's nothing for sale, so it's closed. And the town acquired the Baptist, I think in the 60s or something, when the Baptist turned it over. I'm not sure the date, so that one. The Wilder's the one that we sell the lots at. The Bennett over by the school is another one that there is still lots that can be buried in, but it's closed. There's nothing we can sell. So those 3 cemeteries, Sunset Lake, over by the school, and the Baptist are considered closed cemeteries.
What about the Wilson Cemetery?
Up on top of
Putney Mountain.
Putney Mountain. Well, that's...
It's in Dummerston.
Oh, it is in Dummerston, and actually that's my husband's family. So basically when it comes to those type of cemeteries and there's no family members that'll go up once in a while and do something, they become the part of the town. The town is required to take care of them. But it seems like there's enough people that go once in a while to do something that we just don't, as family members, just kind of, the town doesn't really, we check on it once in a while.
Is that actually town property, the Wilson Cemetery?
It's one of those deals, it's a question on that one.
Oh.
And I'm not sure if nobody does anything with them, it basically goes back to the town if there's nothing happening with them. But nobody does anything. So it's one of those fishy, we just don't, you know.
You send your husband up there once in a while?
Yeah, once in a while he did. About 4 or 5 years ago, he went up and cut trees and stuff up there. You know, and they keep...
Don Hazelton.
And Don goes up there, but we don't, I mean, it's a tough one. It's because there's all little cemeteries in some towns in little spots. So we just deal with our 5 basically, and, you know.
But that's the Wilson Cemetery, nobody's getting buried there.
No, that's all, no, that's a closed cemetery. You know, and we just hope that the Wilsons, you know, stick around to you know, take care of it once in a while. But they could at some point, you know,
I'm not aware, any funds are handled through it's all municipal accounts? You don't have a...
I don't touch any money. Actually, I'm just helping out. Louis and I help the select board.
Yeah.
They're responsible for it, so if we sell a lot, I don't handle any money, it goes directly to the town treasurer.
Yeah, okay.
And the town pays for the mowing, they get the bid for that for the mowing, so that's our responsibility as select board members.
Does the town keep a separate income, a cash flow account for that?
It's a separate fund, and you, at town meeting, appropriate, $5,000
Yeah.
to the cemetery committee each year.
Okay, so it's not self-sustaining.
It's in your town report.
Yeah.
I should look that up.
I mean, when I sell lots, it depends on how many lots I sell for a year.
Right.
I mean, over the last few years, when Wilder got redone, we sold a lot.
Right.
So that was revenue coming in. But some years like this year, I haven't sold any yet. You know, and it depends. It's kind of a fluid situation. You know, you're kind of on call. It's like the way I look at it. It's an on-call committee. You know?
There's not a lot sold now with permanent care.
Last year I did a few. I mean, we put them in the town report. You'll see who bought the lots and stuff.
Yeah.
But over the last few years, there's quite a bit gone out of Wilder. You know, we've made some revenue, and we're still trying to work on headstones. You know, some are breaking, and that's a perpetual problem. So.
Good. Select board, Maria, you wanna hit up what we've been doing?
Go ahead.
Okay, select board, we've been working on the gravel pit is our biggest thing we've been working on right now. And the the bond was approved, so we did get the $1 million bond, and Putney also got their bond. So if everything goes as smooth as it should, we should be closing on August 1st for the gravel pit. And other than that, it's been pretty quiet in town. We do have a new health officer, thanks to Zeke. And that was me. The select board chair gets to be the health officer, so don't have any health problems in town, please. But we just had to appoint somebody to the school board, the unified board, because one of the members that ran had to step down. So that comes back to the select board to have to make that appointment. So we did that this evening. What else have we been?
What does the health officer do?
Are you gonna tell how you did it?
How we did what?
The appointment?
The appointment was, we put out a letter, and the school put out a letter for anybody that was interested in the position, and we had one person, so by the deadline, so that made it pretty easy. Guess who got it? That one person. So Thomas Nolan. So that was great for him to step up and offer his services. Health officer, you could actually ask Zeke. He knows. I'm still reading the pamphlet on what the health officer does. So.
The health officer acts for the select board. The select board is the board of health in town. And so the health officer is there to help mitigate public health problems. And that can range from failed septic systems, rental inspections. And there's a issue between the tenants and landlords. Animal bites, dog bites. That's the bulk of what goes on in Dummerston. There are a lot of private health issues, but those are not the purview of the town health officer. So it has to be public health issues.
Measles? Not for us.
No.
I think the other thing that we as a select board do is pay pretty close attention to the, what the road foreman is involved in and the road crew is doing. So that's one of our main jobs, is paying attention to our roads. I think we're pretty lucky. We've got a good, strong crew, and it doesn't create a lot of work for the select board. It's mostly just paying attention to what's going on. Being supportive of the.
Will the town have to redo the Act 250 permit? No,
No,
for the gravel pit.
the permit runs with the land,
So there's no change.
so there's no change. And I do want to let everybody know that our treasurer did a great job on this bond application. I was looking at it and I said, Charlotte, you want to help out? And she took the reins and she did it. And it was 17 pages of nightmare. I mean, it was crazy, and she stepped up and there was a few days where she said, I gotta leave the office and go home and sit down and have no noise around me, but she stepped up and she did a great job, so it was great, so. Ed.
I wanted to say a few words about Prospect.
Oh.
Prospect is a 37-acre that's owned by the town. We all, I think, mostly focus on it as the pasture, which is only about 5 acres. So it's really also our town forest. There's a right-of-way that's actually been in existence since about 1889, that when they used to bring heifers up the hill to summer up there. We put new trail markers up last fall, so it's well marked, and the trail is entirely on town land. In previous years, adjacent landowners had given some permission to have trails on their land, but that started to be kind of tenuous, and so it was decided it was best to just keep it on town land. So that's the trail's well marked. You can do a loop, go up to the top and continue around for a loop. And this year, Lee Chamberlain and the crew are going to do the maintenance that's required to keep the pasture open. So either sometime this month or in the late summer, they'll be doing that work for us.
Anybody else have anything? Well, I thank everybody for coming out. I think this was really good, and learned a lot. And there is one thing, if it's still light out when you guys leave, there's a war memorial up by the church there, and the Walker Farm donated those flowers. And I mean, I stopped before I came in here, and it's really nice. And
shout out to Lori for planting them.
Yep, Lori planted those up there. It really looks nice, so if you get a chance, let Lori and the Walker Farm know you appreciate what they did there. That's good. But thank you all for coming, and I think it really was nice.